meeting to order. We all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone to our June 15th Select Board meeting, a special Select Board meeting, only because it's on a different date than our usual scheduled time. Any changes to the agenda from any board members? The first item on the agenda is to approve our minutes from our June 2nd, 2021 meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from our previous meeting.
I'll second it.
Hold on just a second. Tim Roper said the audio is not coming through.
This is just Tim. Tim, can you hear us? Sharon? Sharon Huntley, can you hear us?
I can. It's a little bit muffled and not very clear, but I can hear you.
Thank you, Sharon.
I wonder if it's not coming through the sound system. The Planning Commission ran into that one night.
They did?
Yep.
I don't know.
Need the air conditioning on in here.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Was it because he didn't have the microphone close enough?
Maybe not. Can you hear me now, Tim? I can't get it much closer than this.
Amy, it sounds like Tim's saying yours is clear, but you don't have a mic, so it sounds like it's all routed
I think
through
it's
your
going through
computer.
Zoom. It's not coming through the audio here.
Yeah.
Well, that's something new. Technical difficulties.
Is it working now?
I don't know. Testing? Can you hear me?
Now it's on.
There
Yep.
we go.
Okay.
Yeah?
We're good.
That was Lee and Jeff.
Lee Gustafson was the motion, and Jeff Holden was the second on approving the minutes. Any corrections, changes, omissions, errors, anything on there?
I have none.
I have none.
I have none.
None at this time.
All those in favor of approving the minutes as written, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Next item on the agenda is old business. Julie, can you take us to our old business list?
There were citizens' comments first. Did you want to do that?
Oh, yeah, okay, thank you. Do we have any citizens' comments? You had an email today, I think.
I had an
didn't you?
email, but it was about the greenhouse, so I'll bring that
All
up
right.
during the
All right.
greenhouse. Makes
That's
more
it, though,
sense.
nothing else?
No, I don't have anything.
Oh, yeah. If there's somebody here that would like to address the board regarding anything that is not on the agenda, now would be the time to do so. Are there any citizens' comments? How about old business now, Julie?
Okay. So again, just an update on the ash inventory. We are still working on recruiting individuals interested in inventorying their section of road. The group that I've been meeting with, we're kind of working on some campaign stuff that we can get out there and maybe get a more widespread audience. It's an important inventory that is eventually going to be required by the state. It is an important inventory because if we do have the ash borer beetle in town, we need to identify those trees that are infected so we can get them down. Ash trees, when they crumble, can cause a lot of damage. So it is important that we identify them, and more importantly, it is going to be a state mandate before too long. So this is a great way to come out and help your community. I'm not asking you to do all 97 miles, just a section of your road. If everybody could do that, like we do with Green Up Day, then it would be really helpful. We could get it done rather quickly.
Julie, is there a map anywhere that shows areas that have been or are planned to be inventoried?
So we need to do all town road.
No,
that is-
but I mean, like, say I wanted to do a section on Popple Dungeon. Is that something that somebody could look up and say, oh, somebody's already done that?
Yes,
Or is doing that?
we'll be keeping a list of who is doing what section.
Okay.
There's also an app. It's very easy. There's an app you can download from the state right onto your phone, and you can do the inventory right from your phone.
Is that on the
You can work
website?
online or offline.
Is that on the website?
It is not on the website because you would need a little bit of education on
Okay.
how to use it.
Okay.
So we do want people to come to us, but all of that information, we're kind of working to get out there
Okay.
to the community, to kind of advertise this stuff and give you some contacts of who to get a hold of.
Okay.
So for now, if you could get a hold of me, or I know Tim Roper,
Tim Roper
Frank
would be-
Kelly,
yeah.
they're heavily involved, so get a hold of any of us and.
It's not too hard of a learning curve on the app, so it's pretty straightforward once it's on your phone, and that'll give you a picture of what's been inventoried, what's been downloaded into it and stuff, so you don't have to overlap, do so.
Okay.
And even if you do, it wouldn't hurt, I mean, if
Sure.
you happen to overlap a little bit or something like that. But Tim Roper's the head of the committee, he would be able to help you out with that as far as that goes, and give you a link to it. There was a 2-hour presentation on it, but if you're halfway savvy with a cell phone
Yeah.
and the app, it's, the learning curve is pretty quick on it and stuff.
Okay.
In our last meeting, we went through, there's some choices you have to make about what size you're going to inventory and those, so we've made those decisions. So anybody interested, if you can just get a hold of one of us, that would be great, and we can kind of fill you in.
They have been finding that when they have 2 people, it helps a little better.
Much
One
easier.
person to identify and walk, and the other person to do the input.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're losing track of where you are and what's
Right,
going on
right.
and stuff, so it does help out.
Okay.
They have started at a few places in town already.
Yep. Yep, Jeff and I are doing Quarry Road this weekend.
Okay.
Brookside Bridge, so the Vermont Youth Conservation Corps will be here June 22nd to the 26th to work on the Brookside Trail. The bridge will be coming later this summer. That'll be constructed by the Highway Department, but we're waiting on our flood hazard permit from the town, which I should have any day now. As soon as we have that, the engineers will be doing a quick design to make sure that what we're thinking structurally will work. And then the highway guys will be constructing the bridge.
They did have the final walkthrough today with the head of the Vermont Youth Conservation Corps, along with the team leader.
Yep.
And the trail is finalized as far as where it's going to go. And they mapped out all the little areas that they're going to be working with and stuff. And I think they're spending 4 days on that trail and maybe 1 day on the
disc golf.
Pinnacle, just to
Yep.
help out some of the cross trails that work up there.
Yep.
And that's next Tuesday, I guess,
The
Tuesday to
22nd,
Saturday?
22nd to the 26th, yep. Yep, so finally that project will get going. And there are a couple grant opportunities that are coming along. We'd like to expand and do a little more with the bridge and the walkway. So if we are able to get additional funding, right now, we have funding for a bridge, but we'd like to do it as a bridge that goes into a boardwalk of sorts so it would be ADA accessible from the ramp right over to the stone wall back there. You'd be able to do some of the trail. So that's coming with additional funding, hopefully we can get in this next round.
That's exciting, that.
It is exciting. We've been talking about this for ever, it feels
2
like,
years,
so.
3 years, something like that?
Well, it was identified in the master plan, and that was 2016.
Oh,
So,
that's right.
It's been 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it feels like forever. Jeffrey Barn, I know this was on last time, but I wasn't here, so I just wanted to announce it. So Ron brought me over to the Jeffrey Barn. He's got a vision of what he'd like to see the property around the barn look like. And he's going to meet with Kirby. It just is a lot of cleaning up some of the brush, highlighting the trees that are there that are attractive. There is a way, if you clean out the brush, if you're standing on the property between the Jeffrey Barn and Wanda Purdy's house, and kind of looking back to that field, if a lot of that brush would be gone, you'd have a beautiful view to the Jeffrey Well field. And just kind of cleaning up the property, highlighting some of the old apple trees that are just still there, and a lot of the lilacs and such. So the highway guys are going to kind of plug away a little at a time as they have days between bigger projects. They're going to work with Ron. The other thing that he brought to my attention, and am embarrassed to say that having lived in this town for 20 years, I never saw it. Going from Jeffrey Barn, heading north on 103, there is a monument on the left, and I never knew that monument was there. We walked down there. It's actually one of the oldest sites in Chester. And so nobody can see it because you can't walk
It's dangerous.
along
to go up to it.
103 there to see it. So we would like to move it up to the Jeffrey Barnes site. You would still have the same view of the same location, but people could actually see it. So,
That monument is regarding Indian encampment.
and an Indian encampment in that field, and it is one of the oldest sites in Chester. So I just was floored that I had never even knew that monument was there, and it's covered in brush, and it's hard to see, and.
It's dangerous to try
It
to
is,
go
and it's a beautiful monument. It would be nice to move it to where people can see it and enjoy it. So,
I would have a question, though. Is
Yeah.
there access to it? If you move it, are you going to have access, so you're just not stopping on 103?
no, you can pull down into the Jeffrey site. You can pull down in there.
So
And
it'd be
that's
in that
part of what
area.
would be cleaned up,
Okay,
yeah.
that's perfect.
Right now, it's cemented on top of a boulder behind the guardrail.
Yeah,
No wonder you can't see it.
yeah.
That's an attractive site.
Yeah, this beautiful old monument, and it's like, oh my gosh, and here, so we are going to look at, once we get the site cleared up from the brush, kind of move it over to that location.
That's a nice idea, just to, get it, get
It is.
exposure for the area, because
It
it's a
is.
beautiful homestead.
And it's a beautiful homestead. Ron has a real vision for that property, not for the barn itself, but just for the surrounding property. And the Kendall family has some of the original stone posts that were part of that property that they're willing to donate back to that property to put on there as well. So it'll be nice when it's done. Doesn't really cost a lot of money. It's just some labor from the town. So the guys will plug away at it, as they have time.
Julie, was there any, were you able to get a hold of the insurance company to see whether or not we would be covered if we had volunteers working on the interior of that building?
I did get a hold of Fred from VLCT. He was going to kind of look into that. I don't know that they were super excited about it, but said that we could have some options. So I'm just waiting to hear back from the group of contractors that are looking to do the work, to find out the extent of work that they're talking about doing. It mattered if it was exterior, interior. There was a bunch of that stuff that mattered. So I need more detail.
Okay.
Before they'll give a definitive. They did not say no.
Okay.
We'll say that way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Just another thing to point out, so we did, I was approached by Heather Cloud from HCRS about some of their individuals that they work with, who were looking to do some work for the town. So we have contracted with a young lady who is helping Chester Townscape 2 to 3 hours a week with some of their watering needs, which has been a tremendous help for them. I got an email from Lynn Russell today. She was very excited about what was happening. It was a real help. And then we have a young man who is doing just weed whacking for the town 6 hours a week. Which is really helping our cemetery department. So I think it's a great program. It's affordable for the town. It gets us a little extra labor, and gets these individuals some work who can't really, retain a full-time job. They don't have that ability, but it gets them some work, and they're very excited about it. So that so far is working really well for both parties. So. A nice little community thing. The ambulance department was approved for hosting an EMT class this fall. So Amanda was approved to teach the class. This is our kind of next step in growing our service that we're restructuring. So Amanda was approved to teach the class, so probably starting in September, we will be hosting an EMT class at our new building. So far, we have 7 individuals that have signed up and want to, in most cases, become recertified. This includes some cross-training we have some police officers and some firefighters that also want to be EMT certified, and then a couple new people that would be new to our service. So we're excited about that. It's a good thing moving forward
That's great news.
for the new building. It
That's
is.
great news
It is.
for the
Yeah.
department, especially to have more
Absolutely.
people involved.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then speed limits, they're setting those up. The strips are going in next week on Andover Road, 2 strips, where we talked about going. They'll be there for 3 to 4 weeks. So in July, I think we'll be ready, the end of July, to have conversations about what you want to do with the speed limits on River Street, Grafton, and Andover. I think we'll have all the data we need. And that's it for me for old business.
Any board members have any old business? Hearing none, we'll go on to the next item on the agenda, which is a request by the Liberty Players for the use of the town green. Julie, you have details on that?
Yes, they were here last year. You approved them. There's just a couple of individuals that do a dramatization. I guess that's how you say it. So they're looking for June 29th at 6 p.m. It's 45 minutes. It's a 2-man play entitled Ethan and Ira, A Tale of the Green Mountain Boys. And he says it tells about Vermont's role in the American Revolution and the founding of the Vermont Republic. So it's not it's a 45, the way it worked last year was it was 45 minutes to an hour. They're on the green. There's no tickets sold or anything like that. It's just whoever happens to be there. We were out of town last year when they did it, so unfortunately I didn't get to see it, and I'm not sure if anybody else did. I did hear that it was really interesting and a neat little thing, so they're just kind of hoping to come back.
So they're doing the same dramatization this
No,
year?
this one's different.
Oh, okay.
This one's different.
I'll make a motion to let them use the green on June 29th for an hour.
Perfect.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Heather's the motion, Jeff's the second. Any further discussion on this?
It was actually Lee the second. I was the second.
You were, Lee?
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Lee.
It's great that the green's being used for these kinds of things. That's all
It's just fun. It's unique. It's different.
It's fun.
You know,
Did
it's
anybody
fun.
see it here last year? Anybody? No? Wow.
Also, I like that it's kind of a historic thing.
Yeah.
Making people aware of just what Vermont had, part we played in the coming of our new country.
Nice. Sounds like a nice event. All those in favor of approving the motion as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Excuse me. Next item on our agenda is the community greenhouse with our letter of intent. And I know that, Julie, you've been working on this with our attorney, Jim Carroll, for the development of a letter. And hopefully we'll have one by our next meeting. I believe.
Yeah, Jim and I feel we can have it finalized by July 7th. Yeah.
So, I mean, as we get closer to developing this letter, if there's any concerns that anybody has as a board member or anybody hears anything from the the citizens of the town regarding this project that we're, engaging in, bring it up. Make sure we hear about this as we go along and we go through all this process and stuff. Hopefully, we'll have the letter of intent for the next meeting, which will get us further along in the process. And I was also thinking that we should probably schedule some hearings with the public regarding the 2 sites, regarding which way we should go on the 2 sites. We've agreed that the town will be open to either of the 2 sites, but I think maybe we should get this out to the public to have some type of a hearing or some kind of
A little more feedback.
yeah,
I
to
think
see
just a
exactly,
public-
so we could
A
direct.
public forum
a
of
public
sorts, yeah.
forum, call it that.
Yeah, it's not really a hearing. It's a public forum, like what we did with the paper thing. It's just you're there to gain feedback.
Yeah. I mean, eventually, we are going to have
You'll have to have a public hearing,
when
yes.
it gets finalized on the location.
Correct.
Because we're going to be using town land for not selling it, but encumbering it.
You're giving a pretty heavy lease or easement, so to speak, of town property. So we do need to do what's called a 1061 notice.
So that's the formal end of it.
Yeah.
But before we get to that point, we should decide on which property.
Absolutely. I just think gaining as much community input into which site you use and flushing out any concerns right up front will only make the project stronger. You
And it'll
know,
make the process later on, when we go to the
Absolutely.
formal part of it, a little
Right.
easier to deal with also.
right. Yeah.
So we could schedule that relatively soon, I would hope.
You could do that at the beginning of July, the end of July, whenever you,
When we get down to old business, we'll figure it out.
okay.
I mean, new business, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Was there an email?
Yes, so I received an email from a lady in town. I'll just read it. I read about the proposed greenhouse in the Chester Telegraph. While I like the idea of having a greenhouse in town, I am asking you not to place it at the Canal Street location. My backyard is highly visible from that location, and I don't like the idea of living in a fishbowl or of strangers watching my young son playing in my backyard. Thank you for your time. It's just a comment
That was the only one
that
we
was
ever
shared.
received so far.
I've received this one, and I received one phone call that was just concerned that they didn't feel the process was public enough. They're in a butter to one of the sites and just wished that there had been more communication with the abutters, and not just about the greenhouse, but also about Brookside.
So maybe we
So,
should get a.
I think this public forum process that you and I talked about, I think is important, so that everybody is really on the same page.
And get a list of the abutters, an email list.
Absolutely.
And maybe, you know.
Correct, I think we need to
hit
just
them
do better with
directly and
that.
say, this is what's going on
Yeah.
at that time.
Yeah,
To
yeah.
make sure they're included in all this.
Yeah, I think we as a town need to do better with that in general. You know, we often just do our things and forget to notify people around us.
But to play devil's advocate, they know about it. And they know about it because we did a visit.
Yeah.
It's been on the agenda several times. And so if you do it too soon when you aren't sure what site it could be, like it could be 15 sites, now it's kind of narrowed down to 2, I think. So this is the time. So
Correct.
just,
Yep. No, I know where you're coming from.
So Julie,
Hold
does
on a
this
second.
have anything, do the Certified Unified Development Bylaws, or the Chester Unified Development Bylaws have any impact? This is what I'm reading and when we went to the Canal Street site. And this is from the state. So is that something, I mean, we need to keep track of this?
Correct. So the information I gave you in your packet just talks about the Canal Street site.
Right.
And the fact that the state has deemed Canal Street, back in 2010, deemed Canal Street to be an emergent well only. So a lot of the state wastewater rules don't apply to the site. What applies is the town's aquifer protection
Yeah.
district. The state doesn't even want to see Canal Street in the source protection plan because it's emergent only. So that's what this is kind of back in 2010 when they deemed it emergent only. So it's just more for your information.
Right, I mean, you-
But in our aquifer protection overlay districts, certainly structures are allowed. It's just a permitting through the town.
Okay.
So.
And that was basically the same as Cheryl Joy, the information that you had gotten from the state regarding that site, that 200-foot setback did not pertain to this well site. And a question I had for you, Jeff, so when they talk about it, they say it's physically not connected, so right now it's not physically connected? If we were to use it, you'd have to make a connection to make it all work?
Correct. And then issue boil water orders
Yeah,
until.
no matter what happens.
Yeah.
And the setbacks have to be
Yeah, all the zoning
The
regulations still
zoning
all
applies,
pertain.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but from when we did the site visits to now, what my understanding is both properties are back in play.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah.
I would just like to say that until we have the issue cleared up, because if it's going to ever be used for a potable water for the public, then we won't be able to have a building there. You still, if you, the only reason we don't have to now is because we don't do the annual testing for the water and all that, and it's not connected because at least one individual at the state level has said it's an emergency backup. But I would hate to go too far ahead. And, I spoke up and said that I like that location the best for the greenhouse, but I just want to make sure this is cleared up before we commit to that and make sure that we're not ever going to say, oh, we probably would want to use that for water again. But, and I want to make sure that there's more testing. It's not, everything I've seen, it's not capable of the water production that Jeffrey Wells site is by any means, only about half. But I just want to make sure we're safe as far as keeping, not ever having to want to use that for the.
So the issue I see, Jeff, is that the Jeffrey well is our primary and really only source, except in a dire emergency, and then we could turn this well on. But it's not necessarily a backup that we should have in the event that something happens with the well screen or the pump at the Jeffrey well
No,
site.
it can't produce enough water it can only give us maybe an additional 2 or 3 days at the most, if both of our tanks are full when the event happens or whatever. So it's not something that's going to maintain if we don't get another well on.
So from your perspective, it sounds like putting a second well out at the Jeffrey site would be the best option.
Right.
For us to have
So
that duplicate.
My plans are never to run them both at the same time, because that would be, really stress the aquifer.
Sure.
But if you want to take one down for maintenance, you can run the other one, and nobody in town would even know that it was happening. There would be no glitch or anything. So it would be big enough to maintain the town at the same time.
And currently, Naomi and I are working on drafting a letter of what that would look like. That would get sent to the state to see if, he's going to be on board with letting that be a secondary location. If they approve that and say that it is, then we need to work through the logistics of actually making it a secondary site, and that certainly is something that the ARPA money could be used for.
Right.
Yeah, once they give us permission, the first thing we're going to do is put a couple of test wells south of the current well, and make sure that we can produce the water that we need to. We're pretty confident that we can, but we have to prove it. So, but until we get the okay from the state, we can't even go that far, so.
So it looks like that primary aquifer area is half mile, 3/4 of a mile long up the valley. Yeah.
Yeah, it basically runs alongside the river, but obviously it's underground.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, it would be like having the second water tank, basically, because you're in the same aquifer, and our water tanks are connected to the same system.
Right.
So in case one goes
We'd
down,
be
you have
pumping
the
the
other
same
one.
water, just in different wells.
Because the aquifer for Canal Street is a different aquifer.
Right.
By the overlay map.
Yep.
And when I look at it, it looks like it's the capacity on Canal Street that maybe it'll gain us a day or two at best.
Yeah.
So it's really not even worth to try to qualify that as a drinking water. The question I think would become with the state is, if it's not going to be a public drinking water supply put into the system, I would think that it would be allowed, just like any private well would be, where you're going to use it just for the site that you're
Right.
on and working with, whether it's, watering gardens or
I'm
providing a drinking
confident that
fountain.
the water is good over there.
Yeah.
It's just not enough volume to supply the community.
Yeah. Maybe back in the day it was at one time.
Yeah, it was actually, that was actually our first well,
That was.
yeah.
Wow. So there's maybe just that one question that we have to ask of the state is that
We're
can
just-
we use it for a private source just for a single project? Because it is not going to be hooked into the public system. So I don't think it matters on that end, but just verification on that just to make
Right.
sure.
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
No, I understand. No, it's a question that has to be cleared up 100% before you go forward with something like that, just to make sure. And it makes sense to check it out, but.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions or concerns regarding the letter of intent as we're heading forward? Or any other questions while the group is here, the Chester Community Greenhouse Group? Oh, I'm sorry. Please just come up to the mic and state your name. You had your hand up before, and then I
No worries. Hi, my name is Tracy Sorensen. I'm a new resident here in Chester as of February. I'm a new homeowner. And So a lot of this is new to me, and my question was, can you explain the letter of intent that Julie will be writing up for this project? And what that means?
Hear me?
You wanna go for it?
Sure. I tried to call you back a couple times. Your mailbox was full, just so you know. So the letter of intent is basically a statement from the town saying to the community greenhouse organization that that the select board is supporting the project. It will contain within it certain restrictions or reservations. So we support the project, but we understand that there has to be a public hearing. I mean, there's not a town vote, but, you know, if the select board all of a sudden hears from a large percentage of the community that they don't want this, then they may change their mind and say, we can't support this. So there's certain types of reservations in there, but it basically is a letter to that organization saying it is our intent to move forward with this project and to allow you to place this on town property. What that does for them is it gives them some stability with the town for when they go to apply for grants or any form of federal funding that they're going after. It gives them that support from the town because it's on town property. So it's kind of a support from the landowner that they're in agreement with the project.
Okay, and will there be a letter of intent for both locations if there's still going to be a public hearing?
So I think at this point, the letter of intent is not going to be super specific.
Okay.
It's more, we are going to agree to let them put it on town property, with that property to still be identified, because that's still a process the select board needs to go through, and is the reason why we want these public forums, so that abutters and people in town can have input into which property it is that they would prefer to see it on, or not. So the final letter of intent, which may take the shape of an easement, may take the shape of a lease, there's different ways to do that. That more formal thing would come after the 1061 hearing process, notification process.
Another question I had was, do we know how tall the greenhouse is?
That would be for the individuals behind you, how tall it is.
It is actually a relatively shallow scope. Thank you. It's about 20-some feet, give or take. It's relatively squat in its structure. It's 100 feet long and 32 feet wide.
And if anybody has further questions or concerns, where are those to be directed?
You could always get a hold of the town manager
Okay. Always
get a hold of me.
regarding any questions or concerns, or any of the board members also.
And
Or the community, if it's specific to the greenhouse itself, I would reach out to these three individuals behind you, because the specifics about the greenhouse, this is their project that they're coming to the town with. So the specifics about the greenhouse itself, how that's going to operate and function, they would be the ones that would have the most up-to-date, accurate information for you. But if it's the town's role, come to me, and you can also filter questions through me. That's fine, too.
thank you.
And we have a website that you can also take a
Okay,
look
I'll
at.
get with you after. Also, the footbridge and the trails, does that have a certain site, or are they still looking at two
No, that's
different
all-
sites?
That's
The
determined.
trail is pretty much in place. It's all flagged out and marked off, and basically on the property behind your property there, where the little cabin at the back there, if you went straight across, you would see a stake on one side of the river, and that's where the bridge is going to be going.
So that one is a certain thing, but
That
not
one's
the
pretty-
greenhouse?
Yeah, because that
Okay.
one has been, because of floodplain and engineering and a lot of other considerations that we had to deal with the state, so that bridge is going there.
Yeah, that's a project that's been going on for 4 or 5 years now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just wasn't sure if both of the projects are kind of together consolidated.
No, they're separate. 2 separate things.
Well, I appreciate you answering my questions, and we look forward to being a part of the community, and I know that there's a lot that goes into the ins and outs of all this, so thank you for your service.
Thank you, Tracy. Just get a hold of me if anything else comes up. Okay.
Anything else? Any other questions, concerns regarding the letter of intent? Another step forward. I'm excited about this project. Move on to the next item on the agenda, which is our coin drop policy. It pretty much is the one we had at our last meeting with some changes that we've requested. Everybody have a chance to go over it, and does anybody have any other concerns or questions or comments regarding it?
No, thank you.
And the changes, the big change, I guess, were the two coin drops.
And also the safety,
Yep.
Right.
which
Yeah.
was put in, so
Right.
thank you, Jennifer.
I'm just going to say, and I'm not going to debate this, but I just would like to see, I would still like to see at least 3, because the thing is, the American Legion, and you have other veterans groups, SAL, Auxiliary, they all raise money for veterans and stuff, and the Legion just got done with theirs, and it was, they made about $3,000, and I can tell you, last night, we turned around and gave $2,000 of scholarships to the high school kids. So, you know, the money that we raise there, and not just our group, we try to keep it in the community for the kids and veterans. So that's why I would, you just limiting it to two a year. I don't think 3 is too many, but that's all I want to say about that.
But we could always keep an eye on this, and we'll see what happens, see how many requests we have come in this year, and if we have more requests than we have allotment for, we could always revisit this. And if it
You know, I
happens,
in no way, shape, or form think there should be one every other week or anything, you know. But
Well, and I'd just like to say that we've gone from 0 to 1 last year to 2 this year, and I'd like to keep it at 2 because there was, years ago, a lot of concern about having too many. So I think just seeing it for a year and then going from there, or 2 years or whatever.
Right.
Barney?
I would entertain a motion to accept the Town of Chester coin drop policy as written.
So moved.
Second.
Lee Gustafson, that was the motion, and Lee Dakin was the second. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor of approving the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes.
Oh, thanks.
All set, Lee?
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is the Police Advisory Committee and an initial review. I know we've been discussing this for a while now. And in your package, we have about, I think there's 3 or 4 different policies from different towns. And we asked that they were included in your package to see the different variations of the policies that are out there. Milton was one of the ones that was brought to us as a recommendation and thought as being a policy that would work with Chester because of size and because of the police department. And then there's other ones in there. Town of Bennington is also in there, which is probably the other extreme as far as oversight goes. And of course, it's a different situation there too. It is a larger city, and they have other issues and different things that go on there. So basically, we put this together so you can get an idea of how it all works and how different towns are tackling this problem and trying to address policing in the 21st century as we're going forward. The route Chester takes, I guess it'll be a discussion that we're going to have regarding which policy or how much influence or how much power that the committee would have and how it would be formed and what it would look like. So it's something that I just wanted to get the thought out there and the information out there, and we'll be discussing this as we go forward. There are some things that are happening in our town now that might influence which route we take and what we do here as far as these policies go.
Ernie, I have a question. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
You mentioned Milton, but I don't have anything
Milton is what I gave you with Town
Last
of
week.
Chester.
Okay.
That was Milton's policy.
This is,
That's what I thought, but I just want to
Milton's
clarify
policy.
that.
Am I-
Yeah.
and can we put draft on this? Just,
They're all, yeah,
Yeah.
they all are.
well, these aren't.
No,
But
the Chester one, yep.
Town of Chester, I think when we're working with documents, we better just make sure we have draft on it.
And how big is Milton? How many citizens?
It's similar in size. Is it that big?
10,000?
And the size of their police force? Anyone know the size of their police force?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Rick.
You know, when I
forgot
read
Rick
through
was here.
these,
I forgot Rick was
and I
here.
read the Milton one or the Chester one, it didn't really have much teeth to it at all. It seemed like a committee that was just hearing the news as it happened later on and stuff. And then you go to Bennington, where they have a lot of authority with the select board, which I don't really think that's the answer either. But I think somewhere in between these two policies or these two examples of policies where I think Chester would fit well.
It's 10,352.
10,000?
Milton?
So I'd like
I was
to,
thinking it was closer to us in size, but.
yeah. I honestly didn't have a chance to study these as much as I'd
There's
like
a lot
to.
of information here.
There's a lot, yeah. So I'd like to take some more time and just dive into this. I like your idea of stamping this draft. It gives us, it gives, I need to understand a couple of things about this. One is what it is that we as Chester need to do. You know, to go from a town of 10,000 with a police force twice the size of ours and adopt their policy doesn't seem necessarily to be the best thing to do, but again, I haven't
Well,
studied it to
and
understand.
as I said the first time around, when you guys first got this is not intended to rubber stamp.
Right.
This is conversation starting only. Jim has issues with this policy.
Yeah.
So this is just to
Regarding
start,
the Chester, Milton
regard any of them.
Any of them.
There's a lot of conversation to be had around things. This is just to get your conversation started.
I'd like to suggest the following, that we as a board take time over the next couple of weeks to review what we have, to jot down questions that we could ask Jim, and then ask Jim to come and explain what issues that he has and what we need to think about as a town as we move forward, if we're going to implement something like this, just to make sure that we're all on the same page and understanding, number one, the need, number two, the scope, and number three, how we would implement it.
That's right.
There's a lot of towns that are just starting this process, just like we are.
Right.
So there's going to be a lot of information coming out as other towns go through it also.
And I honestly don't feel like we should be the guinea pig and
Oh,
have
no.
the first plan adopted in Vermont, or one of the first plans adopted.
Well, some of these are existing plans. It
Right,
isn't
but
the
I mean,
first
for a
time it
town
happened.
our size. yeah.
But it seems like there's a lot more towns starting to review this and starting to, talk about this and try. And when I look through, I haven't had that much time either to look through a lot of them either, but when you look through them, it's basically going to come down to the authority of the committee, how much they have or how little they have. Then you have all your guidelines that go with it and whatever else to justify it or to legalize it or whatever. And you also have state statute that you have to watch for too, because once you get citizens involved in something, police matters, there's some vetting that has to happen, and there's some other legal stuff that has to happen, because now you're privileged to a lot of information that normal people wouldn't be hearing. And then sometimes we're put into the position of a quasi-judicial position with the police force with discipline and everything too. So how do those two go together? Are we allowed to even do that? And another concern I had is, or a thought that I had regarding this is, how many people from the community are going to actually get involved with this too? And we can go through all this work and all this trouble and try to, set up the committee that makes sense for Chester, and then not be able to staff it or get people involved with this too, because it would be a time-consuming endeavor for anybody to be involved with this, depending on the amount of activity that was happening.
Another question I had was, I thought we were in the process of reviewing or updating our police policies. Is that, yeah. I mean, to me, that would be the first step.
Those policies don't come to the board for approval.
No,
they're happening behind the scenes.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think in the interest of making sure that you and the police chief and the police department are all comfortable with the policies that are in place before we start talking about that, I think that would be the first step. So in my humble opinion, I think we do what I suggested earlier, but maybe push it off a bit until we get the police policies straightened out. Not straightened out, sorry, that was a bad choice of words.
Updated.
Updated. Chief.
Well,
I'm sorry, Heather.
no, go ahead, I'll wait.
To update on the policies, we're probably more than halfway done working with VLCT, and once we get them finalized, then we'll rewrite them and talk with Jim and make sure they're all gone through. But right now, they're probably 90% of them have gone through and had the changes made through VLCT to fit our town, and now Amy and I are working on them to rewrite them, just type out the changes, that's all. To talk about the advisory committee, I'm 100% for it. I mean, it's a great thing. I've talked to several chiefs. I talked to the Milton chief today. He said the biggest thing is it added a tremendous workload to the chief and to the officers to try to get all that information that the committee needed. Then they found out, once they started the committee really didn't know anything about police work. So they ended up doing 13 meetings just going over police policies and rules and regulations and what the police department could do so that the committee actually knew what they were actually doing and looking at. And then he said the biggest thing that they had to get the committee to realize they were only talking about Milton. They're not talking about the media. They're not talking about what's happening in the rest of the country. Right. Only what was happening in Milton, and that was a really hard thing. They're hoping that the advisory committee starts working with them on their oral boards when they hire people to look at those kind of things. They're also looking at doing some ride-alongs so that they can actually go out and see what it is to be a police officer in this day and age and what we're dealing with. But he said the problem they have, it's a tremendous workload for the advisory committee to learn all this stuff. And as soon as they get people that are learning and doing things, they realized it was too much time, and then they were stepping down, and then the new person would come in, and they'd have to retrain. And the committee chair, they've changed twice already, just because it's quite a workload just for them.
Well, and how long have they been going?
Since October 2020. And so they had 13 meetings just going over the policies, what the department does, and what they can, and how they respond, and what they do when they respond, and those kind of things. So it was very much of a learning thing for the advisory committee. So.
Well, from my opinion, when I'm sitting here listening to that, I think that we do need to do an assessment. I think we should put draft on this, and I have read these, But when I don't understand policing as well, like, I don't know if I have the tools to study this yet. So maybe the process of getting to a committee could be a learning evolution for the board and the community. So if, do you know what I'm trying to say? That, and part of, I think, policing issues in the United States, broad brush there, is lack of knowledge.
Absolutely.
So in Chester, if we could start with some in-servicing or educating the public about our new building, what are our policies, that's going to bridge the gap, I find, between police and community. So I hope that the process, what I was going to say before that was, I have an issue with coming up with a committee without community input about what they want from the committee. But also, I don't know what our goals, you said scope, I think objectives, goals, but we don't really have an endpoint of where we're going. So I don't know if I can visualize how to get there, right? So that's my problem with a lot of these is, so I think maybe we should have some kind of educational, maybe that's not, community groups. Maybe we do community groups 13 for the next 6 months and then really have a key about what we're doing here. That's,
It's hard to figure out what are the steps to get to where we want to go when we're not sure where we want to go.
And this is precisely the conversation that when I put this out to the town managers in the state and said, does anybody have policies? Well, we're just now working through this. We're talking through. We don't know what we want. I mean, that's what most towns that have police departments are, that's where they're at right now, trying to figure out what is it we even want?
well, and
What do we want them to do for us,
We
you know?
haven't experienced today yet.
Right.
And I think it's really important if our policy, our police policy, is being updated, which it is, working from that and then educating the public, and then move forward. I think
I
that
agree.
makes a lot more sense than trying to do something like this.
Right, this is, again, this is just to start your conversation.
Well,
This is
I
to
don't-
get this
and you got it
conversation
started.
started.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
And I don't really want to take it totally off the table, Lee, because things then get lost.
Yeah, no.
But you know, but I think it should be, we should have some kind of plan more about policing. Okay, this is what we're doing. And this committee, the goals of this committee, the scope of this committee is to have informed citizens, but if none of us are informed about policing, maybe we need you to help with that.
Right.
So maybe Rick and I, go ahead.
Just like our policy and procedures, you know, when I got there, they were really old. And then I thought, you know, we updated them in 2016, we updated them all. I thought they were pretty, you know, for a lot of departments, that's pretty new. And then you talk to, you know, VLCT and, you know, Trevor, who's the lead police liaison, and then there's like certain ones that need to be done every single year that need to be updated. And then you look at other chiefs, you know, like South Burlington PD, for example, there's 3 people on their department, that's all they do is policies and procedures. So when we're out doing, like me, I'm, you know, still patrolling 40 hours a week, and I'm working chief, and then to try to, you know, make sure these are all updated in between downtimes, you know, it gets busy, so.
Well, and I empathize and understand that, and then we have to look at that from a whole nother staffing
Oh, yeah,
issue.
definitely.
But if we're having, and I don't want to say, in the country, I think it's a crisis.
Oh, yes.
I'm not sure it's a crisis in Chester. I hope it's not a crisis.
We can
But
step ahead of it.
But, yeah, but
Some of these things.
to be proactive, if that's what we need to do for our community and the safety of our police and our community, then I don't think we can say we can't do it because we aren't busy.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, no.
We
And
have to-
that's not,
we
yeah.
We're just
have
saying
to-
it takes us a little bit longer to get things,
Yeah.
you know, the policy procedures, we just can't set aside 3 weeks and do them. We, you
But
know,
maybe
we have to
this
work
is
it in.
then a goal for what is and maybe we tell the public, you know, this is a goal that we're working on in the next 6 months or a year, or and we put some expectations out there so people know that we're working on things. We aren't, but this is, where we're going.
Well, and so, maybe I'll just drop this ball now.
Which ball?
Because why not?
It was coming up anyway.
I read
Here it
about
comes.
this.
No, it's a positive thing. So Rick and I have talked about this a little bit. So one of the things that I would going to be bringing up come budget season is having a thorough assessment done of our police department, and not for the point of finding fault, but for the point of how do we conduct policing in Chester? What are other ways we could conduct policing in Chester? We talk a lot, it's nationwide, we hear it all the time, the phrase community policing. What does it mean? I don't think we actually really know what it means. And what it means for Burlington is not what it means for Chester. And so what does that look like for us? And then let's look at staffing. So here's what 2021 policing looks like. It's not the same as it was 10 years ago. It's not the same as it was 5 years ago. So what does policing in 2021 look like? And do we have the staff for it, or do we not? Do we want body cams? Do we not? I mean, there's all these things that need to come into play. I don't know that I certainly can say with confidence, I am not qualified to make those determinations. So I think that is where an external resource comes in, and looks at much like we just did with our ambulance service. Doing this with our police department. I think it's timely. It will cost some money. There will be an expense to it, but I think it's a valuable dollars spent. It will certainly help Rick moving forward, and I think it will feed this potential committee and help the board decide, where do you want to be 5 years from now in our police department? Where do you want to be 1 year from now? But I don't think we can really make those decisions. I think that's where we need assistance. And I think it starts by looking at, how do we do policing now? What are ways we can improve it? What are our goals? So that is it in a nutshell, and it's going to be hitting you in September with the budget.
And having an assessment of how we do something, from my perspective, is a positive.
Yeah,
it's
always helpful.
So as a nurse, people come and watch you do stuff all the time, right? And tell you how, like this and that. And so you can get defensive, or we can say we want to be the best we possibly can. And I think with the spirit of that,
it's not a negative. It's to help us move forward. And, if funding allowed, I would say all the departments should be recessed every 5 to 7 years. Yeah. But money doesn't really allow for that. There's nothing wrong with looking internally and saying, how can we improve? We should never be saying, no, I don't want to do that. It's the minute you do, there's a problem. So it's a positive. Rick and I have talked about it, and but we're going to present it in September when the budget starts, not tonight. So there you go. That's where we're heading.
But it's all related. It's all
connected.
It's a discussion that we've talked about for a while, and I think it's important that we have.
And so that could feed this policy, I guess, is this advisory committee, how you want to set that up. It could all be fed by that assessment.
I mean, an assessment like that would just give us another tool to improve, to make things better. I think it will give us more information so we can have an informed debate regarding this.
And that assessment could involve some community workshops and community forums where you get the community in. What would you like to see for police reform? What would you like to see for that? What would you like to see us do better?
Is it possible for you to give us a mock timeline on what you think, what are we doing first, second, third, and what do you think the overall timeline is? So when the community says, yeah, you brought up the advisory committee and you haven't done anything, well, this is what some kind of plan.
Yeah. Yes, I can do that. You want it before September then? I'll give it to you now. Okay. I can do that.
I think the assessment would be a big part of this. I think it would help in guiding us no matter what direction we
Well,
go and whatever happens.
It has to be, because if we don't know where we are, we'll have no idea
know
where
where we're going.
we're going or how we're going to get there.
And what are your options of where to go? Like, I don't even know that I know what community policing is. I know the slogan and I have an idea in my mind, but I don't know if it's reality. I don't know if it's
really changed
real.
in the last 2 years, because a lot of things we were doing, they don't want us to do anymore.
Right, exactly,
Which
right.
Chester still loves us.
Sure.
At the school and stuff, I'm there all the time, not as much this year with COVID, but before that, I was there all the time, and, kids love it. Other towns are getting all away from the school resource officer. They don't want the people in the school, so, we do as the community wants. Our principals love us there, and that's what we're there for.
Are you a school resource officer?
No, I was a certified school resource officer. I just go to school at lunchtime.
Hang out at the school.
I just go there quite often.
Community policing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one piece of it. That is one piece of community policing. I think it's bigger than that, but that is one
Right.
piece.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely bigger than
Yeah.
that, 'cause,
Yeah.
I
I mean-
think one thing go ahead.
no, go ahead, Chief. I got a few
I think
things
one
to say.
thing we got to look at is we're very fortunate right now. If we have an opening, we usually can fill it rather quickly. Springfield right now is down like 10 guys. Brattleboro's down 10 guys. Their guys are on call, sleeping at the station, some of them working, some of the Springfield guys have worked 30, 40 days straight without a day off because they have no help. So, we're very fortunate that we have the resources and the people that we have here, so.
Well, and because policing is changing so much, even the staffing, I don't know what it was like 5 years ago, and I don't know what it's going to be like in 5 years, but I think it's going to be far different. Like in 2 years, you said it's changed so much. So what are the skills that your team have, and what are the skills that they don't have, right? And how can we help them bridge that? Those are the kind of things that I would hope that we can get feedback on, so that we can be we can do the best possible policing in 2025 and 2030 and down the road.
I just got a couple of comments. I think the rest of the board should be aware of some of the facts that Rick said. There's not a department in this country that is not short on manpower right now. And it wasn't too long ago, I saw the president of the Policemen's Association nationwide. He said that in the last 10 years, applications for people wanting to be police officers have dropped 60%. And then we turn around and we're demanding more and more of police officers. I can tell you, I've been an officer 18 years, and it has changed so much that they come up with, you've got to be part psychologist, you've got to be an EMT, there's more different training that you have to take. They teach you how to de-escalate and how to identify mentally impaired people and people who are on drugs and all that, and you have to deal with them all different ways. And there's more training for police officers every single year. While you're training those police officers, somebody's got to be out on the street. Somebody's got to be doing the job. So there's a lot more stresses there. And it's not really conducive the way some police officers are getting discouraged because they do a lot of time working on a case and, hours and hours working, putting together all the paperwork the way all the attorneys, all the state's attorneys want it. You get it done, and after a while they say, oh, we dropped the charges. We sent that person to drug rehab. There's no charges on that person. Well, what do you think that does to an officer that feels they've done their job? And nothing is getting done. They don't see any conclusion to it. And they're out there trying to protect the law-abiding, hard-working public. And we don't have the backing to do that. So.
It's not an easy job.
Like I said, I've done it 18
Extremely
years.
difficult and challenging for someone to be involved in police work in this day and age, for sure, Jeff.
There's
And I
more and
totally
more
agree with you.
demands on every day. And less people to do it.
And I've always thought that with more training, higher pay, I mean, you know, we require degrees in all kinds of professions and stuff, but in the police work, we don't. I think, you know, it's like teachers, it's like policemen, it's like firemen. We're underpaid. They got the whole pay schedule backwards with CEOs and the working people that really hold this country together, I think, sometimes. And for some, and it's been like that for a long time. And I feel that jobs like police work, like nurses, like teachers, like the backbone of this country, should be paid what the work that they're worth. And I think it's a lot more than what they get now these days and stuff. But along with that comes the training and the responsibility of that important job, because it is a strenuous job. It's a hard job. I mean, most of the time, it's probably pretty easy going and not too much going on. But in those times when you have to react or have
Right,
a
and they have-
situation, you don't have much.
You have seconds to make a decision that lawyers can take 6 months to pick apart. And it doesn't, and they never back the side of the police officers.
Well, and I think this is where the assessment could be helpful in identifying what, you know, we have 5 police officers, you know, what resources do we need to be providing them with? You know, how do we help them do their job better? And I think, I don't know what that is. I don't know that answer today. So, and that's where this assessment piece can, and the guidance can come in.
And I'm not going to be surprised if some, like body cameras, you said. Okay, I know nothing about the pros and cons. I have not studied that issue. But I know that there are people in the state studying that.
Correct.
And so there's going to be a lot that is going to be determined on what our policies and procedures are from a state level down, and then federal.
Yep.
So I think that policing's in a whole lot of transition now, and there are going to be a lot of demands on our police. So how can we in Chester support them with an assessment and helping us move forward too?
And you mentioned body cameras. I don't think there's a police officer here that's afraid to put it on a body camera. But you got to realize there's a lot of money tied up in that, because you've got to catalog all that stuff. It's got to be logged. It's, you know, there's a lot more money involved in a body camera. But I don't think you'll find a police officer that's afraid to put on a body camera.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't mean to get into the specifics
Right.
of those kind of policing issues. I'm just saying that I think there's going to be federal and state things that are coming down that are going to be mandatory for us to implement.
Yeah.
Well, they're constantly coming down. Like I said, the changes in the last 10 years.
So I don't mean to shortcut this, but I think we've kind of beat this horse to
Yep. I'll come up with what I have in my mind as a timeline of how this would go. I'll put that together for your next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Rick, thank you for the work you're doing.
I think it was an important discussion to start.
Absolutely, yeah.
Get it going to where, you know, where we want to head out with this.
I'm kind of relieved that we all agree we aren't ready to make a decision, though. Because I was reading this, because I'm not ready. What?
I'm very good with that.
Yeah, okay.
This is just to start discussion.
That was not the intention of this
No.
literature,
No,
this
you know,
information, which
it's
is
a
why
lot.
I was calling it Milton, and I didn't even realize that the name of Chester.
I gave you a draft
Now,
at
and I
your
had
last
my old one
meeting,
that had Milton on it still.
start-
That's the one I've been looking at.
just to start conversation,
realize.
which it did.
Thank you. Thanks, Rick. Well, you might as well stick around. The next
Yes.
topic is
Yes.
regarding
sitting right
the
here.
police department. So Julie, you could take us through this with the vehicle purchase for the police department. It seems like we got a fantastic deal from Benson Chevrolet on a police cruiser that usually costs, what, $40,000-$45,000?
Yep, so the voters approved 41,000, that's on average what our cruisers are. Rick did some wheeling and dealing with Benson's and was able to get the cruiser and have it outfitted through MHQ for $23,500-ish, which leaves us about $17,500 left over. So Rick came to me, what he would like, and I support, is a fourth vehicle. It would not be a fully equipped cruiser like our cruisers are now. This would be a car, it would be a used car, primarily used by our detective, Adam. Adam doesn't, on most cases, does not need a fully equipped cruiser to do his job. That would free up the third cruiser for when we want to have extra radar. To run radar, you need to be in a cruiser. And we obviously have talked about that at many meetings. We need to increase that. We are trying to find some part-time officers to help us with that. We do have 1 or 2 now that are, and so it's a vehicle shortage. So we did, a number of years ago, have 4 vehicles.
When I came here, we had an administrative car.
Yeah.
We always had an old clunker, one that was always breaking down, if I remember right.
Well, hopefully that will not be happening with us. So we would like to take some of this 17.5 to purchase a used car. We are feeling somewhere in the $12,000 range could get us something that would work well for us. It would still leave about $5,000 to return back to the budget. So that's what we are asking permission for, unless you have something else you want to add, Rick.
I just want to say just one, we were able to get a 2020 Cruiser that was a leftover instead of a 21 because they did the body change. So if we did that, we would have to change the front and the rear cage and a lot of equipment, and that would have put us about $6,000 more. And we switched from Adamson Industries to MHQ, which is the outfitter that does all our equipment, and that price came in at about $4,000 cheaper. So that's how we were able to save those money. But with our program where our cruisers are traded every 4 years, when I came here, we got $500, if that, when we went out to bid. Our minimum bid was $500. So this year we got $21,920 for a trade and $7,000 on rebates. So by trading them every 4 years, we're definitely getting our money back from the $500 that we used to get.
That's quite a difference.
Huge difference.
And there's probably savings on maintenance, I would assume, too.
Yes.
Because by then, the cruiser's still under warranty
they're
in the
about-
beginning, but
Right, they're about 80,000, miles on them when we trade them. And we were trading the Fords at 120, and it seems like at about 103, 104 is when our transmission went, and it was a 100,000 mile warranty. So then we were putting, 4,000 or 5,000 into that besides, so. By trading every 4 years at 80,000, it's still under warranty, like you said, and we're getting a lot more money than our $500 we used to get, so.
So this extra vehicle that you're talking about, does it have to be equipped, with minimal lights or
Yeah,
anything?
it'll have minimum lights and a radio. That was it, just so if the detective's out, he's got to respond somewhere or something. And it'll also be used when he's not, like, if the guy's got to run to court or something, instead of taking a cruiser or something, they can use this as an administrative car. So we'll just leave our cruisers in town as cruisers to run radar and stuff with the part-timers and stuff. So.
I think it's a great idea.
Less wear and tear on the cruisers, and I imagine this is a probably better gas mile?
Yep.
Yeah.
Smaller vehicle?
It'll be a car, a basic
Car,
car.
two-wheel drive car, like an Impala or something like that.
Yeah.
And I've talked to Benson's, and, they're able to look at something in auction. It may not be next week or maybe, 2 or 3 weeks, but when they find something, a really good deal, because we all know used car prices are really up there right now, so.
Is this the first year we've gotten cars from Benson?
No, this is, I think the Chevys, I think we're about 10 years now we've been buying them.
Oh, I thought it was new. I'm sorry, Larnie, I lied to you today. I thought it was new. I didn't think we'd used them
No,
before.
we've been doing them
Okay.
for like 10 years.
I'm sorry.
I think it sounds like a great idea. I'm glad that you really budget shopped for that cruiser, because I always like when that happens. My concern is that we have another vehicle now. And so there's maintenance on that.
And replacement.
there's replacement on that. And we've spent a lot of money on a new building, and we need more things there. So my only issue is that, but we probably would save some money. But we're going to now have another vehicle, even though it's a used one, to replace every 3 years or 4 years or?
4 years.
Yeah. So that's the only thing that I would say.
Yeah. So then that would be replacing in that 4-year when we don't buy a car.
And like with Matt, we give him an allowance. This isn't a situation in which we can do that. Is that correct? Because it has to have
Yeah.
it has to have the lights and, yeah.
I would think you can't have a police officer driving as a private vehicle, no matter, for anything regarding police work. So do we need board,
Recreation.
a motion, or is it going to be a recommendation, or is it?
I
just-
would prefer a motion from the board authorizing that. Because while we did approve, the voters approved 41,000 for the purchase of a cruiser, this is something a little, it's coming out of the same money, but I do think it should be a motion from the board. Yeah, I don't have that
So how would
authority.
that motion be worded? Is it to use the leftover from the cruiser purchase to buy another vehicle?
That would be
I'm not
great.
sure how to make the motion.
I think you're heading there.
You were on the right
Okay, so
track.
I'll make a motion that we buy a used vehicle with the monies left over from the significant savings from the police cruiser that Chief Cloud recognized with Benson Chevrolet of Ludlow, whatever.
Yeah, that's fine.
Can I amend your motion?
I don't know.
When do I amend a motion?
Does it have to be seconded first?
Is it seconded
You're
first?
going to start getting.
Okay.
I think this is not a hard and fast motion from the sound of it, so I would just say, Heather,
Put in a limit of $12,000, because it's $17,500 that we saved, but the chief is asking for 12 grand.
Sure, yeah.
So
Well,
that
then
I'd
there's
like him
there's
not to
outfitting
go over
with it,
12
too.
grand.
Yeah, so I'll
We're
amend
all
my
set with
motion.
outfitting. We have a radio and lights, so we're all set with that. We just need to,
Just the 12,
just a car.
just the 12.
So I'll put a max of $12,000 on it.
I'll second that then.
Lee Gustafson's the motion, Lee Dakin's the second. You want to repeat that, Lee, or no?
Nope. I'll have Amy read it back.
You got it all, Amy? Yeah, I think so. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Next item on our agenda is an update regarding, what's that, American Recovery Something Act? The funds, hopefully, we'll be able to use them for the public safety building, Julie, is that the way it's looking?
So I've talked to the auditors, I felt could give me the best breakdown of this 156-page document. So we had a conversation about the ability to use ARPA funds to help us with the cost overruns at the public safety building. We have Russell Construction has worked to isolate out the cost overruns that are directly connected to COVID, and we didn't stretch. There was no reaching. We only chose the things that were cut and dry, really obvious, most of them having to do with winter construction because COVID delayed the start date by 3 months. So that is where most of it is recognized. The rest of it is recognized through general conditions, which is things like your insulation, your strapping, the things that are not bid documents that are covered under general conditions. And so we all have seen what COVID has done to the cost of materials. So in some cases, like our bridge decking for town, it has tripled. So they saw those major cost increases in general conditions as well due to COVID. So we've pulled those items out. Total, it's about 119,000, a little over. So what I am asking is if we could use 120, it's like 119.5 something, so round it to 120 of the ARPA money when we get it to help offset these cost overruns. What this will also do is will get us back about 50,000 of our contingency that we could then roll to highway. Because that's a whole nother discussion. So ARPA money will not be able to be used for the highway garage. So, and so that is a project that we are in and we are bidding now with COVID costs. So we've looked at projections of what we do going forward. Do we wait a year? But we really can't. We're on a timeline with the Department of Fire Safety. Our building is close to condemnation. They've allowed us knowing that we had this coming, they have kind of put that off. So we can't really delay a couple of years, and there's no guarantee costs are going to drop in the next year or two. I don't think they'll ever come down to what they were pre-COVID. But anyway, so this gets us a little bit of contingency to carry forward into the highway project as well. So that's my ask.
Makes sense to me.
Julie, I just have one question on this spreadsheet. Under town expenses not covered in the construction contract is the propane tanks. I thought that was a line item. It was not. Okay.
No, so that's a whole nother issue, and that ARPA money will not be able to cover those cost overruns because they are not COVID related. Those costs are about $95,000. Those were apparently agreed upon that the town would cover those, and they would not run through the project.
Okay.
But I'm just not finding that they were budgeted anywhere. So those are expenses that, you know, I think we just leave them for now, and we see where the budget falls out this year. We do know of some, you know, extra aid money that is coming. You know, there's an extra state aid payment coming for highway. You know, there is extra money stuff coming. So that may sugar off and we may just be fine, but I think the budget's going to need to swallow that.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
The propane tank is a big one, but we own those propane tanks.
We own those propane tanks. There are 4 of them. There are 4 propane tanks, and the reason for that is because the generators have to have dedicated propane tanks that are just for the generators, and with new state law on public safety buildings, they need to have the generators and the emergency backup. So, you know, it's a big hit at 26 grand. Yes, but they are our tanks.
I didn't
We own all
realize
of
that they
them.
had to be separate like that, because
Yep.
4 propane tanks of that size are huge.
They're,
Unless you
they have
have
to
an
have,
emergency and have to run those generators, you're going to have most of those tanks sitting there doing
correct,
nothing.
correct. They have to have dedicated tanks to the
So it's 2
generators.
and 2.
Yep.
The one thing that I see on there, the fire safety permit, what is that? What does that cover?
So
Is
that's
that
the,
a state fee?
yeah, those are the state fees. Those are the construction permits for your emergency services building, and then one for the construction at highway. Oh, yeah, the state's definitely getting their chunk of the money, for sure.
Wow.
So we send the state $31,000 to
Correct.
allow us to build on our
Correct.
town property?
That is your permits for building the emergency services building.
That's a great deal.
Oh, yeah. I'm thrilled.
I mean, that's a
be-
big
could
chunk
be
of
more.
our overrun.
That's right.
All the
That's
other
right.
ones aren't, you know, Green Mountain Power, that was because of pole changes or?
Pole relocation. Yep. Yep. Yep.
So do you need a motion on this?
I would like a motion on this, and I will tell you, you know, in talking with Ron, use of the ARPA funds, and I can give you a quick little update on that too if you want. Chester is getting a little over 300 in the first slot of money. The state still has not figured out what they are going to do with the county dollars. You probably have heard about the county dollars. The state is still working through that. If they do what was originally proposed, which is that because Vermont is not county government, so if that gets divided up by the towns within each county, Chester will get another 600,000. So we would see 900 total. What I do know that we will get for certain is it's like 348 is coming to us direct.
So if it doesn't change, the county is going to decide how that money is spent unless they divvy out to the towns.
Correct. Right now, the state of Vermont is figuring out how they're going to break down those funds. It's been an interesting process. I don't want to dog the state too bad, but there's been some interesting things that have transpired with this money. I learned today by accident, it was not emailed out to any of us, that to get your first allotment of money, you needed to go online and request it from the Treasury. I tripped on that. I had exactly 15 days left. If I didn't do it, my money got redirected back to the state coffers.
And we were never notified of that.
There were no emails about that. So there's some stuff that's not overly transparent about some of this. So we really, the towns are really having to make sure that we are on top of this from the beginning. But what I learned today was that this county money, they are talking about using it for courthouses, anything that's related to county. And it's a lot of money. I mean, for Chester, our share alone is $600,000. It's the larger pot of money. It's the county money. And it's two judges
That make that decision.
Yeah. So it's really disheartening to see, with all of the conversations that have taken place that I have been a part of myself this year during the legislative session, talking about getting this money to towns. We got to get this money to our locals. We got to get it there. And now that they've got it, it's, we don't really want to give it to you.
Well, this is an example of a one-size-fits-all approach
Correct.
from the federal government, because most states have county government.
County government.
And so it makes perfect sense to dole it out to the counties. New England's not that way. And so we're totally ignored or misunderstood as to how our governments work, how our states work, and so we're paying the price for that ignorance.
And Sanders and Leahy are fighting hard. I will say that, and Welch. They're fighting hard for Vermont.
Well, the
for
judges,
sure.
the judges could just turn around and do the right thing and divvy out
Correct.
that money equally
Right.
amongst the towns, if they see fit. And hopefully, they would do that.
Hopefully they get
no
the
matter
pressure
what
and
the
do.
situation becomes.
Maybe we should call some people.
I think everybody's,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Absolutely. Get your voice heard. I have called everybody.
The only other thing
They're
that,
tired of hearing from me.
I'd like to bring up, in that 120,000 of those funds, part of this is agreeing to pay Russell Construction an extra $60,000 because they're above their guaranteed maximum price.
So this, part of that 120 is Russell Construction is over on their guaranteed maximum price. They could submit to us, I pulled the contract out and reviewed it today. They could submit to us a change order that would raise the guaranteed maximum price, because these are, under any other construction project, this would be allowed. COVID, unforeseens like this are allowed to drive the cost of the guaranteed maximum price. They have not done that. They have not forced my hand at this point, because we've been trying to work together on just getting this resolved the best way we can. Nobody wins in this. There's nobody that's winning here. But at the end of the day, we're getting a really amazing building. They have worked, this number could be a lot higher, I can tell you. They have worked very, very hard. A lot of time has been put into how we can do things more efficiently and do them better, how we can make some concessions without compromising anything in the building. There has been a lot of effort towards that. So I would like to offer that to them. If we don't, we could see a change order that forces our hand. We have them.
They're 70 over?
They are 70 over, so we're just trying to find some middle ground a little bit, and this still gets us our contingency back. We have them for the highway garage project. They've been amazing to work with. COVID is not anybody's fault, and I know that Russell is a larger business, and maybe this is the soft side of me, but I don't like to see any business get screwed, especially a Vermont one that has worked really, really hard for us. So my feeling is, if we have the ability, then I would like us to try to make them as whole as we can. At the end of the day, it is not my choice. That is the board's decision.
Julia,
But it's just where I stand.
I agree with you. They've been an amazing partner through this whole process, over 10 years.
Correct.
And so I agree with you. I think this is something that if we can do it, let's do it. It will help all of us. in the long run because they're our partner for the highway garage, and so we want to start out on the right foot. So I don't know what kind of motion you need, just for the 120?
I would say just a motion approving the 120 from the ARPA funds when we receive them.
Okay, well, I'll make the motion to approve 120,000 for the cost overruns due to COVID to come from the ARPA funds.
Second.
60,000 being designated as a contingency for the highway garage and 60,000 being paid to Russell for overages.
Sure.
Can you say that one more time?
I'll make a motion that we,
The beginning part, just what Ernie said.
60,000 of that 120, 60 goes to Russell, 60 goes to the town
Okay,
for contingency.
okay.
So that's out of the general conditions and loss production. That's where that is.
Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
Lee is the motion, Lee is the second. Further discussion on this? I just would like to point out, when we went into this, we were recommended to have a 10% contingency.
Oh, yeah, and then there's that,
And we
yes.
went with like 2.5%, which is probably part of the reason we're having a little trouble here at the end as far as the monies go and stuff. Had we gone with the 10%, we still would have had a surplus on the end of it. And a 10% is a standard contingency on projects of this size.
And at the end of the day, even with COVID, when you look at, this was a $3.7 million project over there. What did it, 1.9%. Our cost overrun is 1.9%. Standard, you know, the industry standard is if you come in 5% or less, you're doing amazing. So the fact that we're still only 1.9 with COVID as a factor is actually really huge. So is a testament to how well they've managed the project. Yeah.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor of approving the motion as stated, please say aye.
aye.
Anybody opposed? There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is a general discussion regarding town properties. I know, Lee, you had a question at our last meeting about getting a list of all the properties that we have that are town-owned and where they are and their approximate value. And do you want to have a discussion on this?
I appreciate the list. It was eye-opening to me, and I know I've seen it before in the town plan, but what kind of jumped out at me was the amount or the value of the town properties that we own that are absolute necessities, which we can't sell, we can't do anything with. We have to have the reservoir, we have to have the cemeteries, we have to have the academy building, et cetera. And there's a few properties that are land only that I didn't add them up, but it looks like it's, you know, a few $100,000. And those were the ones that really caught my interest, because I know there are some properties that I don't know what we would ever do with them. And so my thought was to have a list to look at what was there and see whether we need to keep these or whether it would make sense for us to try to offload these to a butter or somebody else who might be interested in purchasing that property and put them back on the grand list.
It would, you know, I agree with you on a lot of them, but to do anything like that, we'd need some more information on this, you know, because I'm looking at these .12, .11, .5.
Right.
They're all over the place.
Land only.
Yeah, and I went on the GIS map for the town and clicked on a couple of properties that I thought the town might own, and, you know, sure enough, it comes up as town of Chester. But, you know, not knowing exactly where these are, it's not clear to me what the value is. You know, like the 40-acre parcel, that's the first land only for $105,000. Is that like a town forest, or it's right under the Jeffrey Well Station, the barn property?
The first land only.
First land only, 40 acres, $105,000.
I don't know. Those 6 land onlys with no description, I'm not sure what those are. You know, the Hadley land, that's behind the Academy building that we
Okay.
just put Brookside on.
Yep.
The Quimby land is at parcel on Route 11 with a house washed down the river. And I know there's another one I looked up that's on High Street, right next to the river. So, you know, those ones, I can't see us doing anything with those. It'd be nice to just see if somebody, like I said in the butter, would be interested in purchasing them.
And some of them, we would have to do some research on, because some of these are like bequests that have been left to the town
Right.
that we agreed to take in perpetuity.
Right.
So some of them, I don't know if we can get rid of. So
So
we'd have
that-
to do some research if there's some we want to look at.
Yeah, and that
thinking
brings
about.
up another point that Heather raised a few years ago, and that is our donation policy.
Correct.
Because now possibly we're stuck with property we can't do anything with. It's in the middle of nowhere or unusable.
And there was one, I don't know how many years ago, a while, like a long time ago, that someone donated and wanted to have a park.
Reservoir Road.
And, you know, there was a problem with that. And I don't know if we ever did what we said we were.
We keep it mowed, and we do
That
our
was
part.
But it was the situation, and it was really unfortunate because this older woman donated something and saw a vision and people agreed. And then she was, so if we're going to take these things on, I also think we should live up to our commitment,
Sure.
right?
Yep. So I don't know, Julie, what would be the easiest way to figure out where these properties are?
Debbie may have something in the vault, so let me start with Debbie,
Okay.
and see what she knows. Yes, yeah. We'll do some research and see
Yeah, I
if we
mean,
can
there's-
identify where they are.
There's
Yeah.
some work involved
Yeah.
to figure out.
Yeah,
And then,
yeah.
once you identify the land and the location, then you have to look on the deed to see if there are any conditions regarding the, you know, when it was given to the town.
And
And
then
if we
you have to
accepted
take
those
field trips.
decisions or not.
Right.
So, and I have a question too about Rainbow Rock. That's a river, in the river, and people go there, they swim, and what's our liability?
So that's covered on our insurance. Yeah, we added that when that group,
Yeah, I
they
know.
came a couple years,
Conservancy.
yes, thank you, came a couple years
The River
ago.
Conservancy helped us with the acquisition of that property. When the Dexters were looking to sell the inn there, and they wanted to break that off because of the new owners might post it as no trespassing. And we thought it was I mean, it is a site that everybody uses a
Oh, I know.
lot on
I
there
know
and
that,
stuff.
but just-
And I guess it's like all town land. Our liability,
I understand
It's the
that
same.
too. I'm
Yeah.
just thinking of the water and the stone and the
Yeah,
rock and
it is.
people jumping in the river.
Yeah.
Well, and I heard, you know, that there's some graffiti there.
Yeah.
So I've asked Julie
Yeah.
to look into.
The guys are working on that.
The guys are working
they
on
hit
it,
the
which,
rock there too? Huh? They hit the graffiti.
It's some different words that I'm not going to repeat in a public session.
Vulgarities.
Yeah, it's
Which
not
is
the
really
same group. I don't believe it's the same group.
but that brings us back to something that I think we should have a park policy, but anyway.
Well, that's on the
Yeah.
list of all the other ones.
Heather, we're going to need a policy on policies pretty soon.
Okay, I'll write that one up.
Well, I appreciate this list, and I will look forward to more information coming.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, we'll work on that.
It's quite a bit. 865.68 acres.
I'm not sure, but that first land only that you were asking about, didn't we purchase some land on North Street behind the cemetery up there?
That could be it.
And that was put in front of the voters, and we purchased it.
It could be.
So we could
expansion?
expand the cemetery. but
could be.
It hasn't been done yet, so.
Yeah, it could be. There's a few things that are popping in. Yeah.
It's a good thing to,
It's
Off
behind
Coburn
the
Road.
old Doc Adams stone house. I can't remember the name of the road now.
Coburn Road,
Coburn Road, yeah. It's,
off 103.
yeah, there's a big pond on the other side of the railroad tracks out there.
Behind that stone house,
Yeah.
or to the left of it,
Yeah.
kind of? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful spot with that
It is a
pond there
beautiful
and stuff.
spot. Yeah.
Well, it'll be an interesting discussion to have and information to get when we start looking into this with a little more detail to see if there is something we could do or not do.
it's a great thing to review every so often.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any comments or concerns regarding that item on our agenda? We'll head on. The next item on our agenda is zoning fees. Preston has identified a few discrepancies in the zoning department, one being that we need to start recording our zoning permits. You noted that the zoning fees are a bit outdated,
Yes.
and I guess they haven't been increased in a while, Julie?
They have not been increased in a while, and the numbers that he is proposing here, this is still pretty low. Other towns are much higher, but we didn't want to take a big jump and double everything. We want permits to be affordable for people as well. So these increases would help cover the recording fees. It adds a little bit more to our revenue, but it also covers recording fees of the permits.
So who gets those recording fees?
We do.
So we record a change to the deed, and that just goes to whoever types up the document or whatever?
That comes to the town. So right now, what happens is, if you recall a couple years ago, so recording fees are set by the state, and 10 comes to the town, and then 5, because they upped from 10 to 15, 5 has to go into this reserve fund for vault restoration. You remember setting that up a few years ago? So that's how they break down. And it's required, I mean, we don't have a choice in the amount of.
Thank you.
Okay, so you're proposing an increase, but I don't see what they are now.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't, oh, whoops, okay, he didn't put the old, sorry. So, lot line adjustments, public hearings, subdivision, that was all 160
$160 per item there?
per permit, yep. And so he's upped those to 200,
Who is he?
The new zoning.
Oh.
the new ZA. Construction with permits over 2,500. So this is new. It used to be that building permits were simply $35 and then 5 cents per square foot of the footprint. But larger construction projects require a lot more time from the ZA. And so that has been upped to 200 plus 15 cents. But we want to recognize that when somebody adds a deck or a shed, they shouldn't have to pay $200 for a permit. So it's keeping that at 50 with 10 cents per square foot of the footprint. Sign permits were 35 and COCs were 35. So those are upping the 15 for recording. This is still low compared to many other towns. But we don't want our zoning process, you know, if your zoning process is too expensive, you're just going to have more violations. It just doesn't, doesn't benefit.
Well, now that I know it was 160 to 200.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, 25% increase over the last, 10, 15
10 years, yeah.
10 years.
It's been at least
Seems
that.
reasonable.
Yeah, they're reasonable fees.
Someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the suggested changes to Chester zoning permitting fees as outlined in the graph.
I'll second that motion.
Heather's the motion, Lee is the second. Any further discussion on it? All those in favor of approving the motion as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All set with that. Next item, our TAN note. This is about as late as we've ever had and as small as we've ever had.
Yes.
And that's probably directly related to our cash flow and our surplus that we have at the end of the year. Because I remember TAN notes to be into the tune of $1 million.
Right.
And they were usually in February or March for that matter.
Usually in February.
And did the school, having the school
So we changed, yeah, we changed how we do things. So now bills, invoices are not paid when they're received, they're paid when they're due, which is a 30-day out. So it just extends your cash flow. The school, instead of making them whole in December, what the law allows is that we have to make them whole in June. So by June 30th. So what we did is, instead of making them wait until June, we paid them each month the percentage of delinquencies that we collected. So they continued to receive revenue, but we didn't have to borrow money to make the school whole, which is essentially what we were doing. And
That's good for the taxpayers. That's like craziness.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we've built up the fund balance, and this is what happens when you have a good, healthy fund balance. So if we didn't have to make the schools whole June 30th, we wouldn't have to be doing this. I was bummed. We tried to stretch it, but we're in an area we're a little nervous, so we're like, we need to borrow. So just 200,000. We also don't need to borrow it through the end of October. We're asking to borrow till the end of July, because that's when our biggest chunk of revenue comes in, and we can pay it back then. So we don't want to hang on to it and pay interest on it. We don't want to do that. We're just going to borrow it, get us through the hurdle, get it paid back.
Great.
So here's, I'm sorry. It's like 3.5 million. It's usually like 3.5 million. Huh? Because we get the school's portion in that big chunk. That's why July is so heavy. Yeah. September is our biggest, but it's July, then August dips, then September comes in.
Yeah. Yep. Need a motion?
Yeah.
Do you want me to?
Need a motion to accept the Town of Chester tax anticipation note dated June 18, 2021, in the amount of $200,000.
So moved.
Second.
Heather's the motion and Lee Dakin's the second. Any further discussion on it? We have to do a bunch of these, huh?
You got three things. Yeah, the resolution, the arbitrage, and something else. The note.
Yeah. So I was just going to ask, can we do this all at once? We're going to do three motions.
As long as you identify each document by name within the motion, you can.
Second part of the motion. Motion. Second part of the motion would be to accept the Town of Chester resolution on the tax anticipation borrowing regarding the aforementioned TAN note, and the Town of Chester tax certificate tax anticipation. That's the same one. What am I looking at?
The resolution.
Do you have yours and mine
I have a
together?
resolution, okay, the first
have
one
to
is the
sign it.
resolution, and the second one is the tax certificate.
Correct.
So those three items: the Town of Chester tax anticipation note, the Town of Chester tax certificate, and the Town of Chester resolution, all pertaining to the TAN note in the amount of $200,000 dated June 18th.
So moved again.
And I'll second it
First one
again.
we'll just scratch.
Yeah.
Heather's the motion, Lee Dakin's the second. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor of approving the motion as stated, please say aye.
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 These are the originals I'm holding?
Yep. They don't mail the fancy colored ones anymore.
No?
They just email them now.
Just three places.
It's a big joke that goes behind the tear.
Oops.
It's the others.
Sorry.
think it would look smashing on TV.
My tiara?
It might sparkle.
My tiara? There's a big story behind the tiara, people. I'm really not like that. There we go.
Oh, I think that's lovely.
Isn't it lovely?
It is.
Oh, it made it. You're all set.
There you go. It's my tiara. Thank you, Asa. We appreciate that. All signed.
All set down there,
yes.
Lee?
Yep.
New business, future agenda items. Any suggestions? Any concerns? Seems like we got
Got a couple
quite a
things
bit
on
on
there
our
already.
plate as it is.
So you're going to set the tax rate,
Yep.
and I'm going to be presenting a change to the police retirement program. And then on the 21st, speed limits and financials. But there's probably other things that'll get added.
And also a forum, what'd you call it, with the public regarding?
Do you
the
want
two
to do
sites?
that? So the letter of intent will definitely be on there?
On the July 7th?
Uh-huh. Do you want a public forum that night, or
So
do you want to move it?
Do the July 7th for the letter of intent.
Uh-huh.
And the 21st for
For the first
for
forum?
the public forum.
Okay.
And it'll kind of keep it going.
Okay.
Good.
And then my timeline, the timeline for PD.
Anybody have anything they would like to have for future agenda items? No, I think we're pretty good there then. Next item on our agenda is an executive session to get an update regarding the police matter.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session to discuss a police matter.
And like Julie Hance with us, of course. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And I recuse myself.
All right, Jeff.
Nice seeing you.
Heather's a motion, and Lee is a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 No.
You get to go home.
And for Select Board, I will send you an email tomorrow when the packet is ready to be signed. I mean, not the packet, the warrant is ready to be signed. Whatever that thing is.
Take that tiara out.
I'm glad to see someone else messes up too sometimes, you know?
Whatever you
I feel a little more human here.
Oh, my word.